All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Friday. Yay, it's Friday, October 20th, 2017. And this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Friday, everyone. It is a chilly and overcast 50 degrees and very fall-like here in upstate New York. So where did we leave off yesterday? I ran a rebroad back from September 20th, 2016, but I thought it was very pertinent to some of the things that I was running across over the last 2 days in my news stories, and I wanted to do a refresher for everyone, including myself. We titled the show 5G, Terahertz, MmWave, and the Internet of Everything. And when we originally aired this show, we had JJ on as a guest. He was off that day, so he wanted to come on, and we had a good conversation. And I saw somebody left a comment about they listened to 20 minutes and there was too much bantering. They really wanted to know more about 5G. So today, we took yesterday as a primer, and today we're going to take a deep dive into some of the things we've been looking at over the last two shows, not only 5G, MmWave, and terahertz, as well as the Internet of Everything, soon to be you. But back to 2 shows ago, robots, mental health, farming, Internet of Things, SpaceX launches, and Musk. I want to tie some of the space Internet connectivity that is going on in the background into some of this. There's a lot of things going on that aren't making headlines that you need to be aware of. Now, we also have this integration of the Department of Defense and the federal government into technology companies. A lot of that came with the spying. Not that any of that is a surprise anymore. But the spying with the advent of 5G and MmWave is going to go on fast forward. And that's what we are going to talk about today. Here's a story that I ran across, and this has nothing to do with 5G or MmWave, but it does have to do with energy weapons. I thought it was interesting, encroaching into the realms of common people. Raytheon integrates laser weapon and surveillance technology onto Polaris ATVs. Now, about a month or two ago, I ran across the fact that Polaris had been doing work with DARPA, and they were working on some sort of autonomous ATV. At one point, there had been like a demo video out there of this ATV zipping around. Of course, they said it was going to be used on Mars for unmanned missions, or of course in the desert to be able to keep the death count down for reconnaissance. Well, listen to this. Raytheon has combined a laser weapon and an advanced surveillance equipment to a Polaris-built all-terrain vehicle to develop a new platform that can engage unmanned aerial vehicles. So all those UAVs that aren't supposed to be out there without human intervention, using laser beams, says Popular Mechanics. And this was dated October 17th, 2017. So this was 3 days ago. A new high-energy laser weapon system, which is the MZR platform, MRZR platform, features a 30-square-foot electronics package, Polaris MZR ATV, and Raytheon's multispectral target system, which also supports electro-optical and infrared sensor functions of the Predator drone. Ben Allison, director of Raytheon's high-energy laser product line, said that the company developed the tactical vehicle to support forward operating bases and to fulfill a customer need for mobile counter UAV platforms. I think I need one of these. The HELWS-MRZR will be demonstrated at the U.S. Army Maneuver Fires Experiment at Fort Sill, Oklahoma in December of 2017. So what do you think of them apples? They are weaponizing Polaris ATVs. And that's probably the extent of this invasion into our lifestyles. It is coming from every direction. Now, remember Regina Duggan? We've talked about her many, many times. Regina Duggan started as a director at DARPA, and then she moved over to Google with Kurzweil and the Google AI. And then Regina Duggan bounced over to Facebook to head up their secretive hardware lab called Building 8. Well, guess what? Same day, October 17th, 2017, Regina Duggan, the head of Facebook's secretive hardware lab, is leaving the company. Duggan is departing after just 18 months to, quote, lead a new endeavor, unquote. Regina Duggan, the head of Facebook's secretive hardware lab called Building 8, is leaving the company after just 18 months. Duggan's departure was announced internally on Tuesday in a post where she wrote that she is leaving to lead a new endeavor, though she did not specify what. Duggan will stay at Facebook in early 2018 to ensure a smooth transition, she added, and of course that's just elevator pitch. And it's unclear who will take over Duggan's role to lead Building 8 on a day-to-day basis. Facebook recently promoted Andrew Bosworth to run all of the company's hardware projects, but that also includes Oculus hardware, not just Building 8. And I would say, having known personalities that remind me of Regina Duggan, she probably got her nose out of joint. This dude got put in charge of her and said, screw you, I'm going to go do something else. And now the gamble is on as to where she's going to go. Remember, she is that slippery tentacle that they use as a way to get their arms into different institutions. And we're going to talk a little more about Facebook after Regina Duggan. There's a tidal shift going on in Silicon Valley, and those of us in this industry have greater responsibilities than ever before, says Duggan in a statement provided by the company's spokesperson. The timing feels right to just step away and be purposeful about what's next, thoughtful about new ways to contribute in times of disruption. Yeah, she's going to look out for you. I'm going to guess that she may go work for one of these companies that is working on launches to space. We're going to look at internet in space, and Elon Musk is really kind of headlining a lot of that. But you have Jeff Bezos as well at Amazon, and you have Facebook and Google that are in the middle of all that as well. Duggan made a big splash when she arrived at Facebook in early 2016. Not only did she join to run Facebook's hardware efforts, which were totally new and garnered a commitment of hundreds of millions of dollars from the company, but Duggan also has an impressive background. Before joining Facebook, she led Google's advanced technology and products team, which built things like the modular smartphone and clothes outfitted with microsensors like that Levi Project Jacquard that Google worked on with them we read about the other day. Before Google, Duggan was the director of DARPA, the special research lab that builds U.S. technology for the military. At Facebook, Duggan oversaw numbers of hardware efforts, none of which actually launched, including a video chat device and a smart speaker, according to Business Insider. Duggan also led the company's brain-computer interface project. We talked about that, to be able to type just by your thought, a new type of technology meant to translate a person's thoughts directly from their brain onto a computer screen. Duggan unveiled the project on stage at Facebook's annual developer conference back in April. Now she is leaving, and it is unclear whether or not her departure will affect any of Facebook's existing projects. Building 8's team is now hundreds of people, according to a Facebook spokesperson. So there you have it. But something I came across when I was digging a little bit deeper, and I must have missed this one. This was December 21st, 2016. Facebook's secretive Building 8, headed by Regina Duggan, inks deal with 17 different universities. Now, we've been seeing the more and more we dig that a lot of these projects with these technology companies and the military are dangling monetary carrots to these universities to make our children do their dirty work and come up with their discoveries. Facebook's secretive lab, Building 8, has signed a collaboration deal with 17 universities to speed up the research cycle for hardware and software. Building 8, headed by former Defense Advanced Research Project Agency Chief and Google executive Regina Duggan, has entered into a, quote, sponsored academic research agreement, and that means that Facebook can get new research projects launched in weeks, bypassing the 9 to 12 months it usually takes, says Duggan in a Facebook announcement. Facebook is hoping to tap the best research minds of the world to speed up product development, says Duggan. And the academic institutions include Stanford University, Harvard, and MIT, and they will be paid a fee by Facebook. When curiosity strikes this new agreement in place, Harvard researchers can initiate new projects with scientific colleagues at Facebook almost immediately. Now, here's a couple interesting things. We looked at some of the history of Harvard with the alphabet agencies, but also more interestingly, that is where Zuckermucker came from. What's Harvard? And his wife, Chan, I don't remember her first name. We're going to look at their initiative and what they're up to in a few minutes. Says Isaac Kohlenberg, Harvard's Chief Technology Development Officer and Senior Associate Provost. The agreement with Facebook recognizes that the most significant transformative solutions will be informed by university science. This is not the first time that Dugan has struck a deal of this kind. As director of DARPA, she worked with universities on research projects involving technology for the U.S. military. In April, Facebook hired Dugan to launch Building 8, and Dugan will help shape such Google initiatives as Project Tango, which is a 3D mapping capability for mobile devices. Also Project Ara, which is the tools for building modular smartphones, and Smart Fabrics, wired with electronics, and her wearables. And she was also working on those swallowable tokens and the tattoos, customizable tattoos, if you remember that. We heard an interview by her. Heads the research and product development group considered vital to Facebook's 10-year technology roadmap. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg's 10-year vision for the company relies on major technological breakthroughs on three major fronts. One would be artificial intelligence, ding, and we're going to talk about that next. Two would be augmented and virtual reality, which is what 5G is going to bring. And three would be bringing internet access across the 4 billion or so people who still don't have it, and that would be in Africa. And that is part of their internet.org project. We're going to talk about that as well. At the time of her appointment, Zuckerberg wrote in a Facebook post, "I am excited to have Regina apply DARPA-style breakthrough development at the intersection of science and the products to our mission. This method is characterized by aggressive fixed timelines, extensive use of partnerships with universities, small and large businesses, and clear objectives for shipping products at scale." Well, then I came across a story, and this is October 17th, 2017 as well. This is out of Forbes.com. Facebook is helping Intel build its first AI chip. Now, didn't we just read about these new AI chips? They're going to go head-to-head with NVIDIA, because NVIDIA has been cornering the market and having processors that are fast enough to make little supercomputers out of and crunch all this data. Well, giant chip maker Intel is seen as a latecomer to the much-hyped artificial intelligence market. NVIDIA, maker of graphics chips, has emerged as the key hardware platform for the latest developments in deep learning, and that is because they're using robot googly eyes, an important branch of AI that involves training computers using huge piles of data. But coming later this year is Intel's attempt to fight back with its first chip dedicated to running AI operations. And the company has signed up big collaborators with this first run, and that would be Facebook. We are thrilled to have Facebook in close collaboration sharing their technical insights as we bring this new generation of AI hardware to market, says Intel CEO Brian Kranich in a blog post published Tuesday morning. Intel is making first-generation versions of the chip available only to a limited set of partners like Facebook to get feedback for the second version due out sometime next year. And if you remember, Facebook was expanding their data center, and they pulled some computer scientist out of retirement who had worked at one of the universities in California for many years. He was very well known to help them come up with a way to double their processing power without having to double their data center size. Facebook is an important player in AI in both research run by deep learning pioneer Jan LeCun, as well as by applying the latest AI techniques widely across its social network. Intel is calling the upcoming chip a neural network processor, or NNP for short, formerly codenamed Lake Crest, and as the chip's name suggests, the processor is optimized for running neural networks, another name for deep learning. It is the first chip product in the world specific to neural networks, says Naveen Rao, a corporate vice president of the AI unit at Intel, in an interview. Rao said the chip will work well for both inference, which involves simply running the algorithms, and training the AI models, which is more computationally intensive, parts where NVIDIA currently dominates. NVIDIA's graphic processors, or GPUs, have taken off in deep learning because of their ability to compute in parallel. A GPU is thousands of tiny computers operating in parallel dedicated to rendering the pixel. And a few years ago, researchers discovered that the capabilities of GPUs were almost ideally suited to running deep learning algorithms, which also requires thousands of parallel computations. Intel said that the NNP would also do well with computing in parallel using a number of new chip designs. Intel plans to release performance benchmarks for its AI chip later this year, and Rao has been working on this chip since 2014 when he founded AI startup Nirvana, which Intel acquired for $400 million last year. Because the chip project began outside of Intel, the first chip to be manufactured by Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing company, not Intel. Well, that's interesting, because Intel chip manufacturing has also been utilized for NASA, and that was quite a number of years ago. I remember that. It's because of their high precision and their clean room environment they have. Intel said it would take over manufacturing with the second version of the chip and make the hardware more available than the first chip. Intel continues to dominate an overwhelming share, 99% of the market, for CPUs, or central processing units, in the data center. But NVIDIA's graphic processors have become essential for the latest AI developments, and its data center is booming. In NVIDIA's most recent financial quarter reported in August, I wish I would have had NVIDIA in my stocks, because these guys, I remember back in the day, they were only a few bucks a piece, and their cards took off quite a while ago with 3D. In its data center business, its revenue was up $416 million, up 175% year over year. Meanwhile, in Intel's most recent financial quarter reported in July, its data center business was much larger with $4.4 billion in revenue, but it only grew 9% from the last year. As a result, NVIDIA's stock has nearly tripled in the last 12 months, while Intel's stock is up less than 6% over the same period. In this new era of AI, Intel is having to move beyond its general-purpose CPU to keep up, and has acquired a number of companies. The biggest was in 2015 when it acquired Altera, the maker of field programmable gate arrays, for $16.7 billion. That's a pretty hefty price tag. And last month, the company said it's even working on a neuromorphic chip that attempts to function like a real brain, though that project is more experimental and is years away from commercialization. If you remember, we read about neuromorphic chips few weeks ago, and they were using silver and electrical impulses and zapping the silver, and it was forming like brain-like strands and connecting different regions together. It's pretty interesting. I'll see if I can find that story and put it in the notes. The strength of Intel is our broad portfolio, Rao claimed, and there isn't a one-size-fit-all. NVIDIA also moved into more AI specialization with its hardware. Its latest graphic chip architecture, named Volta, contains so-called tensor cores, which are specialized computers designed to run the mathematical operations used in deep learning software. So there you have it. Facebook and Intel have now joined forces. So what is Facebook up to? Facebook has their internet.org group where they want to provide rural areas without access to the internet. And of course, that's what keeps them poor. To the world, Facebook's internet.org satellite back in 2016, September 2nd, was destroyed in a SpaceX explosion, and Mark Zuckerberg was disappointed. SpaceX was preparing for test firing its unmanned Falcon rocket when the blast happened shortly after 9 a.m. at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. A massive fireball explosion erupted on September 1st at SpaceX main launch pad, destroying a rocket as well as a satellite that Facebook was counting on to spread internet service to Africa. Ding! There were no injuries. Phew! But the pad had been cleared of workers before that was supposed to be a routine pre-launch rocket engine test. SpaceX's chief, Elon Musk, who suffered a loss of $62 million with the explosion of SpaceX rocket, wonder if he could get insurance on that, said the accident occurred while the rocket was being fueled and originated in the upper stage oxygen tank. Cause still unknown, says Musk via Twitter. More soon. And remember, there was a video of that. And there were some people talking about it being sabotaged at that time, but I don't know about that. The explosion was heard and felt around for miles, and it dealt a severe blow to SpaceX, still scrambling to catch up with satellite deliveries following a launch accident last year. It also was a setback for NASA, which had been relying on SpaceX to keep the International Space Station stocked with supplies and ultimately the astronauts. And so it's interesting, Elon Musk has been not only doing work for places such as Facebook satellite launch, but also for other governments, for NASA and for the Air Force. It's pretty interesting. So listen to this. So the company that was providing the satellite for Facebook, their name was Spacecom, and they were an Israeli company, if I am not mistaken. So after that explosion, Spacecom was seeking $50 million or a free flight from SpaceX after that Falcon 9 explosion. SpaceX may be on the hook to compensate Space Communication Limited for the satellite that was destroyed during the explosion of their Falcon 9 rocket, either with a free trip or $50 million, according to Reuters. Satellite had been planned to be launched this weekend, and it would have been used to provide wireless connectivity to parts of sub-Saharan Africa as part of Facebook's Internet.org initiative. The tech company had partnered with Eulostat Communications to help deliver the service. And as I was digging into the type of service they were going to be providing, it was interestingly enough, it was going to be 5G or millimeter wave that Facebook was going to provide to Africa. And as we have all this new technology coming in this Internet of Things and being able to do remote diagnostics and even be able to see through skin remotely, you would see why this would be important to them. SpaceX gives a free ride to replacement for Facebook's fried satellite. This is a brand new story from yesterday. This is why I went back on that. October 19, 2017, Israel's Spacecom still loves Elon Musk enough to pay for future launch. Spacecom and SpaceX have settled their differences over a burned satellite, and the Israeli company that was going to be launching Facebook's new African satellite once again signed Elon Musk's company for launch services. Spacecom told the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange that it expects to use SpaceX for a launch also in 2019 and possibly a further launch in 2020. Their relationship looked doomed after a spectacular Falcon 9 launch failure in 2016 destroyed a Spacecom satellite built to help Facebook take over those parts of the world not yet under Mark Zuckerberg's loving gaze. Spacecom launched demanded at least a free ride by way of compensation, and that's pretty much what it got. The company said that the 2019 launch of the Amos 17 cost will be completely covered by credits from last year's Amos 6 fireworks show. Amos 17 is being built by Boeing to replace another Spacecom bird, Amos 5, which failed in 2015 after an electrical fault. That issue left Spacecom renting space from AsiaSat to get a footprint over Africa. And if all goes well, a reused Falcon 9 will hoist Amos 6's replacement, the Amos 8, in 2020. Now, talking about fireworks, they said it was a spectacular display of fireworks. We've talked before about how to sell things to the public. That's one of the big things that DARPA has been working on, is how to manipulate trust and how to get the buy-in of the public, who they have to try and slip this stuff in without you questioning. Well, listen to this. This is out of IEEE Spectrum from June 21st, 2017. Drone fireworks, 5G communications, and streaming VR coming to the Olympic Games. So nothing like putting this on the world stage to make the world deadline of 2020. Who needs fireworks when you've got drones, or even tickets when you've got virtual reality? That is Intel's message as it prepares to bring technology to the 2018 Winter Olympics and future Olympic Games. The company today announced that it had joined the Olympics Partner Program as a major sponsor through 2024. And this is Intel again. No dollar figures were mentioned in the press release held in New York City via web conference. However, the rumor mill has been pegging the deal at 9 figures or somewhere over $100 million. Intel was far more specific about the technologies it plans to deploy for the Olympics, and that would be drones, virtual reality, 5G communications, and artificial intelligence. Ding-a-ling-ling. Intel CEO Brian Kranich, the same guy, suggested that Intel is also working with Olympic committees to develop new training technologies, but it didn't give details. Kranich is joined by the International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach, who is clearly concerned about bringing young viewers to the games. And he wants to be able to sell this technology to the young ones. Sports has to go where the people are, and many people are leading a digital life. Technology, he continues, has huge potential to connect the games with the younger generations. Just put on one of these VR addictive headsets. Drones, according to Intel CEO Kranich, will have two roles at the Olympics: entertainment in the form of light shows and to carry cameras for broadcasting and other purposes. The ultralight entertainment drones, he indicated, will swarm the skies so people aren't scared of hearing and seeing that anymore, and act as a safe and more creative replacement for traditional fireworks. These drones are so safe, he says, that Intel staff members have launched 100 at a time and purposely run into them. And the heavier camera-carrying drones are used to measure and observe athletes and will use obstacle avoidance technology still under development, probably by the military, Kranich indicated. On the VR front, Kranich promised to bring two recently unveiled technologies to the 2018 Olympics. The company will stream 16 live and 16 on-demand events using true VR technology, which made its debut during the 2017 NCAA basketball playoffs. There will also be a showcase of its 360-degree replay technology that recreates moments in the event from a point of view of specific players, first used at the 2017 NFL Super Bowl. I have a friend who is involved in selling technology like that for a large internet service provider. It's pretty insane. You can actually have a front row seat if you want. And as for 5G, and this is one of the promises of 5G, is real-time VR. Intel's Vice President Asha Keddy, along with the company's 5G development team and Olympic three-time gold medalist Kerry Walsh-Jennings, pushed a symbolic button to turn on Intel's 5G test network in Silicon Valley and promises a 5G network would be running throughout the venues of the 2018 Winter Olympics. That part of the announcement was live-streamed using this technology. Artificial intelligence will enable more detailed analysis and comparisons of players' performances. And going beyond the company's current 8-year sponsorship deal, Intel expects to have new technologies that are Olympic contenders, including more AI, deeper virtual experiences, and new roles for drones and autonomous vehicles. Now, how insane is that? So we're going to make sure we roll this technology out in the Olympics so everybody can see it, and it will be put on display. So when 5G comes to your Internet of Things, you will be willing to accept it because you saw it on TV and in your VR goggles. Now, we had talked about in the show I replayed yesterday some experiments that Google was doing with what they were calling skybender drones. And this, again, was going to be not only to offer internet across the continental United States, but also to offer internet to places such as Africa. They had been launching, I think, from New Mexico. They had put up some new towers and done all kinds of crazy FCC submissions. Well, there's an update to that story. It came out 3 weeks ago. Project Skybender, Google's secretive 5G internet drone tests revealed. And trials at New Mexico's Spaceport Authority are using new millimeter wave technology to deliver data from drones, potentially 40 times faster than 4G. Now, if you take a look at the electromagnetic spectrum, you see that on the low end, we have radio waves, and that'll be to the far left, and that goes up to 3G. Then we move in between the 3G and the 30 gigahertz spectrum, and that would be microwaves. Beyond microwaves is 30 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz, and that is in your millimeter sub-terahertz range. And then there is above 300 gigahertz to 3 terahertz, and that would be your terahertz range. And we're going to look at the millimeter 5G range and the terahertz range. So anyway, Google is at this New Mexico spaceport, and they're using this new millimeter wave technology to deliver data from internet drones. And these are solar powered. Google is testing solar powered drones at Spaceport America in New Mexico, and I think Elon Musk has some of that leased as well, to explore ways to deliver high speed internet from the air. The secretive project, codenamed Skybender, the technology giant built several prototype transceivers at an isolated spaceport last summer, and this test began with multiple drones, according to documents obtained under public record laws. In order to house the drones and support aircraft, Google is temporarily using a 15,000 square foot hangar space in the glamorous Gateway Space Terminal designed by Norman Foster for the much delayed Virgin Galactic space flights. The tech company has also installed its own dedicated flight control center in the nearby Spaceflight Operations Center, separate from the terminal. The Skybender system is being tested with optimally piloted aircraft called Centaurs, as well as solar-powered drones made by Google Titan, a division formed when Google acquired New Mexico startup Titan Aerospace in 2014. Titan built high-altitude solar-powered drones with wingspans up to 50 meters. Emails between Spaceport America and Google project managers revealed that the aircraft have exclusive use of the spaceport's runway during the tests and even venture above the neighboring White Sands missile range. Ding, ding, ding. Now, if these guys, Google and DARPA's tentacles, aren't involved with the military, I don't know who is. They can send their internet drones over White Sands missile range. Google spent several months last summer building 2 communication installations on concrete pads at Spaceport America, and Project Skybender is part of a little-known Google Access team, which includes their Project Loon balloons, a plan to deliver wireless internet using unpowered balloons floating through the stratosphere. One of the millimeter wave transceivers was located near Spaceport America's spaceport operations, although Google's plans do not involve any rockets just yet. Both installations have cabinets full of computer servers and other electronics, while the pad at the SOC required a concrete-based dish antenna nearly 8 feet across, according to separate filings with the Federal Communication Commission. Work did not proceed smoothly, however. At one point in late August, a lorry showed up at 10:30, which is a cap. This must be an English publication, causing the Spaceport America team to complain to Google, We have no loading dock and no means to remove a pallet from the middle of the truck. Oh, lorry is a truck. The lorry was turned away without making its delivery. Later, components were installed upside down or supplied by Google without the necessary shelves, nuts, and bolts. And near the end of the build in October, information system manager at Spaceport emailed a Google contact. He says that we want to run to Home Depot for grounding straps. Oh, no. We are transitioning to support all aspects of Spaceport from our operational budget, but as bonds have spent except for the amount reserved for our Southern Road, we are asking the legislature for $2.8 million, and we appreciate that our request is a lot of money, but we also feel that it is a relatively small amount to protect the state's $218.5 million investment already made in the new and exciting commercial space industry. So New Mexico gave them $218.5 million. Google is also paying Virgin Galactic $1,000 a day for use of the hangar, so I guess that's not NASA or SpaceX, in the Gateway to Space building, but had to split its Skybender tests into 2 separate flight campaigns to ease Virgin Galactic's concern. An unnamed Virgin Galactic executive emailed Anderson before the test to note, "We will be arranging numerous activities around the occupancy periods, which would be impacted if there was any timing changes." Google also had to promise not to take any photographs while in the building. So there you have it. You have Facebook, you have Google, You have Verizon, you have Intel, all getting ready to launch 5G or millimeter wave networks. IEEE Spectrum 5G bytes millimeter waves explained high-frequency millimeter waves will greatly increase wireless capacity and speeds for future 5G networks. Today, mobile users want faster data and speeds and more reliable services, and the next generation of wireless networks, 5G, promises to deliver just that and much more. Right now, though, 5G is still in planning, and companies and industry groups are working together feverishly to figure out exactly what it will be. But they all agree on one matter, that the number of mobile users and their demand for data rises. 5G must handle far more traffic at much higher speeds than these base stations that make up today's cellular networks. To achieve this, wireless engineers are designing a suite of brand new technologies, and together these technologies will deliver data with less than a millisecond delay and bring peak download speeds of up to 20 gigabits per second. At the moment, though, it is not clear which technologies will do the most for 5G and in the long run, but a very few favorites have emerged, and the front runner includes millimeter wave, small cells, massive multi-in, multi-out, full duplex, and beamforming. Today, wireless networks have run into a problem. More people and devices are coming online more than ever before because of the Internet of Things, and it remains crammed in the same bands of radio frequency spectrum that mobile players have always used, and that would be the microwave. This means less bandwidth for everyone, causing slower service and more dropped connections. Maybe that's why Verizon sucks so bad right now. And one way to get around that problem is to simply transit signals to a whole new swath of the spectrum, and that is up the next level to the sub-millimeter wave, one that has never been used for mobile service before. And that is why providers are experimenting with broadcasting on millimeter waves, which use higher frequencies than the radio waves that have long been used for mobile phones. Millimeter waves are broadcast between frequencies of 30 and 300 gigahertz compared to the bands below at 6 gigahertz that were used for mobile devices in the past. They are called millimeter waves because they vary in length from 1 to 10 nanometers, no millimeters, compared to the radio waves that serve today's smartphones, which measure tens of centimeters in length. Until now, operating parameters of satellites and radar systems that use millimeter wave for real-world applications. Now some cell providers have begun to use them to send data between stationary points, such as two base stations. We're going to look at millimeter wave in the military radar space, but using millimeter waves to connect mobile users with nearby base stations is an entirely new approach. There is one major drawback to millimeter waves, though. They can't easily travel through buildings or obstacles, and they can be absorbed by foliage and rain. And that is where terahertz comes in. That is why 5G networks will likely augment traditional cell towers with other new technologies called small cells, and with millimeter waves and other 5G technologies. Engineers hope to build and engineer wireless networks that future smartphone users, VR gamers, and autonomous cars will rely on every day, as well as smart appliances and your medical devices. Already, researchers and companies have set high expectations for 5G by promising ultra-low latency and record-breaking data speeds for customers. And if they can solve the remaining challenges and figure out how to make all these systems work together, ultra-fast 5G service could be reaching consumers within the next 5 years. And even more, because their global timeline is for 2020. Talk about future wireless networks in a swirling ahead of Mobile Network Congress, enough so that it is sucking many of us into believing that 5G networks could feed all of our internet device needs. By all means, keep loving 4G because it will continue to evolve and become more readily available for years ahead. But for those intrigued by inceptions, now is the time to tune into industry leaders from around the world as they hammer out standards for 5Gs, which are projected to switch on around 2020 or sooner if South Korea demonstrates it in 2018, which I didn't realize that's where it was, and host the next Winter Olympics. That's where Verizon was working on their 5G networks, was in South Korea, or maybe it was Qualcomm. We read about them a few months ago. To evolve beyond 4G Intelligence, communication capabilities, and processing power, as well as artificial intelligence, will need to be diffused across the networks and mobile devices, empowering even the smallest of connective devices to do heavy computational tasks and run rich content and services. That is according to Asha Kelly, General Manager for Mobile Standards for Advanced Technology at Intel, who attended the World Mobile Congress for the past 4 years and will be speaking on the panel of this year's event. Ketty describes 5G as the first network designed to be scalable, versatile, and energy smart for the hyperconnection of the Internet of Everything world. That's what I said, is the Internet of Everything, guys. These next generation networks and standards will need to be solved to fix a complex challenge of combining communication and computing together so intelligence is at your fingertips or implanted in your chest and available to the machines that make up the Internet of Things, says Ketty, who is helping Intel work on technologies designed for the network core, network edge, access network, and device layers that enable it. In Facebook, last year, Cisco, Intel Labs, and Verizon, in a joint wireless network research project, and those are three biggies, revealed a set of neuroscience-based algorithms that adapt video quality to the demands of the human eye, hinting that future wireless networks would be built in human intelligence. Looking back, Ketty said that every G is run through about a 10-year cycle before a new generation supersedes it. 2G networks were designed for voice, 3G for data and voice, 4G for broadband internet experiences, and with 5G, we will see computing capabilities getting fused with communication everywhere, so trillions of things like wearable devices don't have to worry about computing power because the network can do any processing needed. She did say that 5G networks will bring computer processing to the devices that need it. And yes, a wearable device could connect to other devices, and this could lead to new kinds of experiences. These 5G networks will also be faster, but a lot smarter as well. And these devices will act as networking nodes rather than just terminals. They will... That is why Intel is working on the technologies for the core, edge, and access points of these networks, as well as what is required for devices to take full advantage of 5G networks. Now, let's talk about some of these technologies and things that they can do with things such as millimeter wave. This is out of the Department of Energy. Millimeter wave sensor technologies track biometrics, as well as detect chemicals, gases, and radiation. Argon's millimeter wave sensor technologies measure a wide range of threat materials remotely. Now remember, we've talked about the Department of Energy being in the middle of a lot of this stuff before. They were part of the Manhattan Project. They were part of synthetic biology and the synthetic biology report to Congress. Now we have the Department of Energy involved in millimeter wave sensors to track biometrics and detect chemicals, gases, and radiation, all in the name of keeping you safe and doing it remotely. Security threats come in many forms: airborne, radiative, gaseous, human, or infiltrative, and it can be costly and impractical to deploy a broad suite of detector technology to identify all potential hazards in public places. Argon's millimeter wave sensor technologies measure a wide range of threat materials remotely, making them well suited to many security, industrial, and medical applications. Natural gas pipelines stretch over 2 million miles across the United States, and pipeline leaks can be deadly. Current leak detection systems are labor-intensive and costly, and drawing air samples from specific inspection locations. Argon's radar technique uses millimeter wave to remotely detect and image above-ground natural gas leaks. This technique has potential for below-ground use as well. All matter emits electromagnetic radiation. Argon Science has developed a detector that focuses on the high-frequency waves emitted by chemical gases as they pass through the atmosphere. With a passive spectroscope, the detector uses millimeter wave to produce spectral signals, and because every chemical produces a unique signal, the device can detect the quote-unquote signature of chemical situations before they do any harm. And beyond detection, passive millimeter wave technology also creates images of targets detected through plume mapping. The intervention received the R&D 100 award in 2007. Remote millimeter wave detection tools can also identify physiological markers through biometric data. For example, suspects in a crowd setting might stand out if their heartbeat or their blood pressure were out of normal ranges. I mean, they can read your heartbeat and your blood pressure remotely. In a healthcare setting, millimeter wave sensors can monitor real-time vital signs and movement remotely. Millimeter wave sensor technology has a number of benefits. It can function remotely, operate under realistic field conditions, and provide spatial and spectral as well as temporal data. Able to detect targets in a crowd, it is portable for covert operations as well as customizable and tunable. I mean, this is what they're going to be utilizing in our communication devices of the future and this network that they are in the progress of building. So I came across a story out of the Wall Street Pit, October 18th, 2017. SpaceX has laid the pipes for the next internet. Oh, thank you, Elon Musk. Satellites designed to provide internet access could bring $1 trillion in annual revenue to the players of the private space industry. It is a fantastic time to be in the industry. That is how Karina Bryce Christensen, founder of Bryce Space and Technology Research and Consultancy Firm, described the current state of the space industry. In SpaceX, the aerospace company that keeps revolutionizing people's mindsets about space as a business, deserves most of the credit. Led by Elon Musk, SpaceX's fundamental mission is that of offering low-cost space transportation and starting the colonization of Mars near the year 2020. It is worth pointing out that Musk is not the only rich guy space enthusiast who is pumping life back into the U.S. space industry, especially after the space shuttle was retired in 2011. And I always point back to that. That was Obama who did that and who launched this insanity that is happening now. There's Microsoft's co-founder and philanthropist Paul Allen, who also founded Stratolaunch Systems. Remember Paul Allen of the Allen Institute that is 3D mapping neurons and providing a 3D map for some of the work that George Church is doing. That is a Seattle-based company that is developing a new air launch to orbit system. Amazon's Jeff Bezos and Virgin Group's Richard Branson also belong to this club. Bezos founded Blue Origin, while Branson founded Virgin Galactic, two companies that cater to space tourism and space missions. These four visionaries and astute investors, however, are not the only ones who have a stake in the business of outer space. Christensen noted that since the year 2000, several startups have attracted more than $16.5 billion of investment in the field. The figure is funded 140 new firms, and two-thirds of them launching during the last 5 years. And in 2016 alone, nearly $3 billion were pumped into 43 startup ventures. It's very interesting to note that our federal government has put time, effort, and executive orders into space as well. They were talking about controlling space and controlling the world. Wernher von Braun had also warned about the dangers of he who controls space will control the world, especially with space weapons. And remember that millimeter wave and terahertz technologies are part of the technology that the military has been manipulating and tinkering with for a very long time. So SpaceX is pushing to bring internet into space. SpaceX is pushing hard to bring internet to space, and they were doing all kinds of launches. We had read about the Iridium communication satellites yesterday, the day before, that they were working on launching, and they had 5 or 6 launches dedicated to them. For months, SpaceX has been quietly meeting with the FCC to advocate for one of the least known projects. According to recent disclosures, the company met with the FCC officials twice in recent weeks, first with a wireless advisor on February 28th, and again on March 10th with the chairman, Pai himself. The same two topics came up at each meeting. The first was a stalled proposal to ease the regulatory demands on commercial space launches. The second was a far more ambitious one. SpaceX is seeking a license for a lucrative globe-spanning satellite network that would bring terrestrial internet into space. Musk did not attend either meeting, but SpaceX's president and COO was there in his place. Musk had been batting around the idea of a space internet for years, initially proposing it as a way to connect SpaceX's Martian colonists. And in near term, the system can be adapted to deliver easy, continuous access to base stations around Earth, providing simple connectivity to the planet's most remote communities, probably including Africa as well. The proposal filed in November of 2016 shows how the system would actually work. 4,425 satellites in a non-geostationary orbit traveling in a tightly choreographed ballet 700 miles above the Earth's surface, keeping at least one satellite 40 degrees above the horizon at nearly every spot on Earth. Companies have long toyed with the idea of a satellite network that delivers data directly to individual devices and small base stations. And in the 1990s, Motorola backed a similar project called Iridium. Wow, interesting that the company is doing launches for now that's doing a constellation of satellites is called Iridium as well. But torn between spiraling investment costs and waning customer interest, the project went bankrupt just 9 months after its launch. Well, there's another one back on the way. And after an estimated $6 billion in development costs, the firm was bought by investors for $35 million in 2000. Iridium's main competitor was the Qualcomm-backed Globestar, met a similar fate. But now the dream of a globe-spanning satellite network looks like an increasingly feasible reality, particularly with 5G technologies just a few years away, promising new devices and new demand for data. And that is attracting investment from a batch of satellite providers that includes SpaceX and its long rival Boeing, and a more recent challenger called OneWeb, all of whom have proposed similar constellations. All three would employ similar portions of wireless spectrum to complete their network. The risk of building such a network is substantial. The constellations will cost at least $6 billion each, and the cost will grow as each project scales up. And with the constellations at least 5 years away from operation, many observers think it is unlikely all three companies will go the distance with funding and regulatory support, consolidating around the likely winner. If the resulting winner becomes an integral part of the cellular network, it is easy to envision making that money back, but it is also easy to imagine the whole thing spiraling into bankruptcy before they reach the finish line. Then there is the question of the FCC, who also controls the airwaves that those satellites will need to reach U.S. customers. OneWeb was the first to submit its application for that spectrum, but the commission responded with a call for proposals to anyone who wants to use the relevant wavelengths for a satellite connectivity project. That inspired similar filings from SpaceX and other competitors. And in the coming months, the commission is expected to rule on all of them. Given the FCC's traditional enthusiasm for market competition, observers expect a permissive ruling inviting all the companies to use the relevant spectrum, but asking them to work together and stay out of each other's way. And remember, we have the DARPA Spectrum Collaboration Challenge. They're looking at putting AI in charge of real-time what's it called? When they cut up a spectrum, I don't even remember what the term is called, but they do it in optical. They want to now do it in the radio spectrum. Even after the FCC ruling, will continue to play a regulatory role, setting deadlines and stepping in if talks between the companies break down. There's no indication that Chairman Pai wants to pick winners in this new space race, but if one of the contenders starts missing deadlines and causing interference, he may have no choice. Against that backdrop, SpaceX's meeting with Pai takes on a greater significance. Musk has drawn criticisms for his ties to the Trump administration, and just 2 days before the Pai meeting, he was at Trump Tower joining the real estate developers and cabinet members for what discussions of the president's infrastructure plans. Musk has defended the meetings as a good policy push, but as SpaceX prepares for one of the biggest projects in its history, having a few friends in the White House certainly couldn't hurt. Now, here's something even more interesting. So not only does SpaceX have a few friends in the White House, maybe this is it. Hold on one second. There was a story that came out October 18th, 2017, out of SatelliteToday.com that SpaceX was launching a mysterious payload for Northrop Grumman. Now, we are finding more and more that SpaceX has connections to not only federal space agencies, but also to Air Force bases and some of the Air Force and things that they are launching. Federal Communication Commission filings have revealed that SpaceX plans to launch an undisclosed payload for Northrop Grumman sometime in November. And while it is assumed that the satellite will be used for government operations, no official government agency has stepped forward to claim the payload, including the National Reconnaissance Office, which has launched multiple spy satellites on SpaceX vehicles this year. So they're launching spy satellites with SpaceX. Well, that is just lovely. So now let's take a look at millimeter waves and how they have been used to enhance military projects. If this will load, I hate to have to sing. I think my computer is saying enough already. Enough. This is out of Microwaves and RF publication. I just want to see what the title is. Millimeter waves enhance military projects. Given its potential for sensing and high data rate communications, millimeter wave technology is a prime candidate for enabling the latest military, aerospace, and security technologies. The spectrum congestion at the lower gigahertz region has caused many industries to seek technological solutions in the millimeter wave spectrum. In fact, technological development for millimeter wave solutions in sensing and telecommunications have encouraged millimeter wave research and development in almost every industry. Specifically, the military and aerospace industries are looking to millimeter wave technology to increase connectivity and sensing for the next generation of tactical networks, security, electronic warfare, and even active denial systems. This interest is being met with sponsored initiatives of product development from military organizations such as the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, more affectionately known as DARPA, the Air Force Research Laboratory, and many military security contractors. For its part, the AFRL, and that is the Air Force Research Laboratory, has a dedicated organization within the U.S. Air Force and is tasked with developing warfighter technologies in the areas of space, air, and cyberspace. And to meet these goals, the Air Force Research Laboratory is delving into millimeter wave technologies, including high-power transmit sources, millimeter transmitter arrays,